How's everyone doing today? We're going to do things, just kind of a random convo in the camper. As you guys saw from the last video, we got it on the truck. And later, I'll talk about, got them right here, the winner. But I also have quite a few honorable mentions because a lot of you guys came in the same ballpark. But today's gonna be a little different. We're in the camper. I'll be honest with you, I find it's on my truck sitting here in my front yard, and I come out here and I like being in it. It's a comfortable space. You know, it's strange. I sit in it, and I'm, like I said, I'm just sitting in front of my house here on the curb. And I kind of feel like I'm in my own little area sometimes. Not always, sometimes. I guess from the larger philosophical position, you know, that's kind of the allure of why, you know, many of you are listening to this, you know, why we have an interest in these little homes on wheels. Not that, you know, you're going to go sit in them in your front yard, but, you know, the idea of the versatility of them, a home away from home, you know, kind of that final place to go. So this video will be quite a bit different, I think, from what a lot, but I'm just gonna kind of just have some random convo and talk about the build and just kind of talk about you know, my thoughts on the matter. So the truck camper that I'm in now has been on the truck now for just over a week. I put it on not this past Sunday, but the previous Sunday. So what are we at? Tuesday. So, you know, 9 days ago, I guess. And I will admit, I worked on this camper for about 4 months, just a shy over 4 months. And man, I without exaggeration, I work 7 days a week on this thing. I work full time, but I would put in time before work, on the weekends, and I think I averaged it out. I probably put about 3 to 4 hours a day in some fashion. And I'll admit, I'm not breaking my back. Sometimes I might just be dilly-dallying in the garage or doing some little thing, but that's a lot of hours. If I remember correctly, when I added it all up, it was somewhere in the range of 400 to 500 hours I put into this. And I ask myself this question, and perhaps many of you, you know, why would I put so much time into something like this? And it may not be well known to many of you guys, but you know, I've always, that's kind of how I've always been. I always have little projects. You know, building this camper is just one of many things that I've built or I've worked on or I've been into, so to speak. But this camper is definitely special, and there's a couple reasons why. And I think for all of you, you know, though, you know, the subscribers and the regular viewers that I have, I think all of you, this will resonate with you. You know, one there's a practical element. I think this is a pretty good camper. You know, it's hard to quantify what it would cost if you bought one, but I think all of you know out there, a truck camper is pretty big money. Though their construction technologies are vastly different than this one, I think of, from a weight standpoint and from an amenity standpoint, the two competing truck camper models that are closest to this would be like the Scout camper. I believe it's the Olympia model, and Kimbo camper. Now, if any of you guys know, both those campers are dramatically different in looks and material. The Scout camper uses a composite material, and the Kimbo camper uses a, I believe it's an aluminum body. But in terms of the weight, and we'll talk about that a little later, and the general amenities, I think they're the closest comparisons to this. And those campers run between about $20,000 to $30,000. So I didn't quantify exactly what this cost to build, but I'll tell you this: it's an absolute fraction of that. So I don't think you could. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a 30-year-old truck camper for as much as I spent on building this. So there's that practical element. I have something for little money that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise unless you had some dramatic deal or some other unique circumstance arise. It's been a great bonding experience for me and my kids. I think I've talked about the story of this wall right here. The kids and I were out exploring in the desert and found an old pallet. We busted it up, took it home. I planed one side, ran it through the table saw to clean up the edges, and here it is. It's a wall. It's a permanent accent wall, and it also has some structural value in this camper. And every time I look at this, I'll remember, the trips I've been out with my kids. My kids helped me build this. They, it's heartwarming to see how excited they are every week that I would see them, and they would come over, and we would go through and work on this together, and they saw it all come together. And I intend to keep this camper, God willing, for a long time. And I think they'll grow up with this camper and, always be a little part of them, and always will be a little part of me. The memory, so to speak. I think and hope that they learn some important skills building this. I was self-taught. I didn't have someone to teach me how to do things, and I started woodworking in about 2003, and my pops wasn't around, but when I was very young, I had a memory of him building some coffee table out of 2x4s, and it's kind of a funny memory. He was I must have been only 6 or 7, but it was kind of one of those fleeting memories of him in the living room of an apartment, some shitty apartment that we lived in, and he was cutting a board in half with inside the apartment with a circular saw. And I remember seeing I don't know if he hit a nail. I don't even know what he was doing now in retrospect, but I remember like this big spark shot across the apartment, and it caught my attention. And that coffee table, when he made some side tables, amazingly, that would have been mid to late 80s when he was building those. And I remember when my mother died in 2003, she still had them. So they were around. And kind of going back to my own life in 2003, I remembered that I kind of wanted to have a hobby, I guess you'd say. I wanted to be creative. I wanted to build something. And I thought back to those experiences with my dad, and though they weren't much, in fact, it's almost kind of comical to look back on it. It inspired me to build, but I didn't have anyone to teach me. YouTube didn't exist, or if it existed in some infancy at that time, I doubt it did. I didn't know about it. It was just, I just figured it out. I just bought wood and cut it up, and I did eventually buy some books, and you guys get the point. So forth and so on. But for my kids, My experiences of figuring it out were invaluable, and I still look back at those, and I'm very happy that I had those. But I do want to extend an interest in my children and a knowledge base in my children to do something, to have some kind of a skill, to build something. And building this camper, though we've done many things before it, don't get me wrong, this was kind of a big genesis to that. It was a big part of that, and there will be many things that have occurred before that I've taught them, and many things that will happen that I will teach them from now on. But I hope that this camper in and of itself will be kind of a physical reminder of their accomplishment and our accomplishment, and truly the value of being able to do something, to build something, to create something. And we will have many camping trips in the future and many experiences in this camper. And I think that'll be special for them. The camper also was therapy of sorts for me. I know I don't really hear many people talk about that, but I think I'll throw out the word mindfulness, and that sounds like kind of a catchphrase, and we've probably all heard it at some point in time. And but building a project like this was a huge exercise of mindfulness to me, and not just in the act itself, but in the planning. And like I said, this entire camper, what you see here, what you've seen me build, like, this is not some plans that I bought and I flipped it page by page. I mean, this is a true construct of my mind. And that takes a lot of thought. I mean, I'm nobody special, and that's not what I'm trying to convey, but it does take a lot of mindfulness, a lot of thought, a lot of attention to detail, a lot of actualization or realization of every step that I do. How's that going to impact 10 steps from now? And when you make a mistake, because I'll tell you, I've made many in this project, acknowledging those, recognizing those, and being able to move on. And to that same idea of therapy and self-development, mindfulness, I think, is a big factor to getting through hard times. I don't need to go into detail to describe that 2020, and frankly, it sounds like 2021 is not much better, has been a bad year. And I'll admit to all of you, I'm a fortunate one. I've not been financially impacted by the virus, or at least not as of yet. But nonetheless, that and so many other things that have happened in 2020, which any one of those by themselves would have been unprecedented, has taken a toll on me, as it is all of you watching this video right now. The practice in mindfulness that I've been able to focus on in this construction has, like I said, it's been therapy. It's I didn't necessarily intend for it to be that, but it's been pretty amazing for me. Finally, it's this is kind of more of an extreme thought process, but this little camper it's given me some sense of security. It's a home on wheels. It's a home away from wheels. If I had to, I could escape in this thing. I could stay in this thing. I'm not going to present any scenarios where that would be necessary, but think about it broadly, right? Preparedness. saving for a rainy day. You know, don't box it in any mental thought process, but think about it in a very broad sense, right? A lot of what we do and a lot of what we do that brings comfort to us as humans is developing contingencies, is planning for a future day, and that could be as simple as living below your means or having a savings account. To throwing an extra couple cans of food in the pantry or some extra toilet paper or investing money wisely or a home away from home. I don't know if most people think of RVs or campers or truck campers or whatever you want to call them in such a way, but um, there is a sense of preparedness in their existence. It is a place that you could stay if all else fails. Many of you watching this I'm sure, are well aware of the nomad movement. And, you know, I'm not a nomad, but I've kind of followed the movement and had an interest in the movement for quite some time. And it really seems to be encompassed of two broad categories of people: those who choose to do it because they want freedom, and those who have no other option to freedom but to do it. And the latter of which would be, you know, somebody who their world had financially collapsed. And it's either a cardboard box or it's a steel box in a van, for example. And in that, they find freedom, they find choice, they find opportunity where otherwise it may not exist. And for me, I recognize that and I value that. I'm not in that position, but I have been. I've been extremely poor. I've been homeless for brief periods of time. I've lived in garages. I've lived in squalor. Not in the last 20 years or so, but I have. And those experiences don't fade from me. I recognize them, I see them, and I think most importantly, and many people who haven't had those experiences, is I realize that they're a reality that could come back. I own this camper. I own the truck it sits on. I put every single nail in this camper. I've put everything together, all the systems. I know everything. And in that is independence and freedom and security. For many listening, that will not be understood by them. You'll think I'm crazy. But for many of you, that will resonate and you'll understand. Those are the reasons why I built this camper and why it's brought me a benefit. And I hope all or some or part of what I talked about is a motivation for those of you watching this and your choice to build a camper like this. I say maybe I'm just a crazy man, but perhaps something I say is meaningful to some of you out there. I appreciate you listening. Kind of to the point of the video, and what some of you guys might be interested in is the weight of the camper. And I'll talk in later videos about various things. I'll be tinkering on this thing for a long time. For the sake of conversation, I'm just going to round up and say that the weight of this camper is about 800 pounds. Now, let me caveat, and I probably should have been a little more clear about this in my initial video. That's essentially a dry weight. That doesn't include the water. It doesn't include my junk that I'm going to put in here. It doesn't include the battery bank, but it includes essentially all of the structure of the camper. Now that does though include the solar panels, and I don't know if if solar panel weight would typically be considered part of that or not, but I wanted to put the panels on before I put it on the truck, because when I knew it was going to be up on the truck, it's going to be about 10 foot in the air, and I prefer to put them on when it's 6.5, 7 foot in the air as opposed to 10 foot in the air. So the panels weighed about 60 pounds, and they were installed. Vent fan was installed. All the furniture, the table, just wasn't water, wasn't the battery. But that weight came in at about 800 pounds. It was actually technically a little under, but because there are many, when we're kind of talking about that much weight, I kind of don't really want to get down to the pound, because, there's so many factors that get involved. I mean, how full was the tank of gas? And, was I parked on the scale in the same exact spot, or how accurate was the scale? So for the sake of conversation from now on, I'm going to basically say the camper weighs about 800 pounds. But it was probably technically just a hair under, 10, 20 pounds under 800 pounds. So in the 780, 790 range. So the person who actually, I would say, had the very closest guess was Hiker John. So congratulations, Hiker John. He came in at 790, and that's probably about the most accurate. However, I was really impressed that there was many of you that came in very close. So I'm gonna mention you, and I would say that I would consider you guys to be right on, because when you're talking about something that weighs in the 800-pound range, the difference between 20 or 30 pounds, at least in my eye, is marginal. For many factors that might come into play when you calculate that. So these are some honorable mentions. No particular order. James Strootman at 873. I think that was a good guess. Vicarious Air 763. Another great guess. J Deuce, I believe it's 13. If I got that wrong, I apologize. 749. Joaquin Vizcarra 777. 808 State 825. Michael Weber 750, and David Pierce at 840. If I missed somebody, I apologize. But I would say most everybody guessed. Well, I don't want to say. I would say most of the guesses came in one or two categories, either somewhere in that 800-pound range. Those that I named were just a sampling of those, and those are some pretty good guesses. And then a lot of people guessed somewhere in the 11, 12, 1,300 pound range. The wet weight, the battery pack, full of water, all my junk and gear, my bedding, that 11, 1,200 pound range is probably in that ballpark. So for those of you who guessed that, if that's what you were guessing, a net weight, as I think what they call it, then yeah, you guys are probably, I'm just estimating, of course, but I'm going to say that you guys are probably in the ballpark. So, hey, look, guys, my biggest takeaway is, be inspired. Go out and do something. Build something, create something, do something that is yours. And when I show these videos, yeah, I'm not going to lie. I mean, there's part of me that's very proud of what I'm doing, and I do enjoy, the comments of people saying great job. I'm not going to lie to you. And I think maybe not many people will admit that, but I think all of you guys can recognize that. But I honestly, it does mean a lot. I know some of this has inspired some of you out there, and that means a lot, because all of those reasons why I described that I built this camper, I think are important human needs for those of you out there who might build perhaps your own camper or something. So for all of you out there, thank you for watching, and thank you very much. You guys have a good one.